The station did not allow mistakes, orbiting a silent trade route at the edge of controlled space. Checkpoint K-17 followed protocol with perfect precision. Every scan, every signal, every movement recorded and judged without emotion. Nothing entered without permission, nothing left without inspection. And no one ever broke the rules until that moment. A weak signal appeared on the outer radar. Small, unstable, drifting, an escape pod. It spun slowly through the dark, its surface burned and broken, barely holding together as it moved closer to the station's gravity field. Inside the control room, officers reacted instantly. Unidentified pod detected, the system announced. Origin unknown, signal integrity critical. The captain narrowed his eyes. Scan for life, he ordered. The answer came quickly. Single life form detected. Silence followed. One of the officers leaned forward, checking deeper layers of the scan. Then his expression changed. Species classification. He hesitated. Unknown. No, wait. The system updated again, and this time, the tone shifted. Warning, species flagged under extinction level threat category. The room froze. No one spoke for a second, because everyone understood what that meant. Anything marked at that level was not rescued. It was erased immediately. The captain's voice turned cold. Do not open the pod, he said. Prepare remote disposal. The order moved through the system without hesitation. Weapons began to charge, targeting the drifting object. But one man did not move. A human officer stood at his console. Staring at the live feed, the pod rotated slowly, revealing a crack along its side. Through that crack, something faint could be seen. A small shape, not moving, not fighting, just there, sir, the human said quietly. The captain did not look at him. That is not a rescue situation, he replied. It is a threat containment. The human swallowed slightly. But his eyes did not leave the screen. It is a child, he said. The word felt out of place in the room, heavy, uncomfortable. One of the officers shook his head immediately. It is not a child, he said. It is classified as a system-level threat. The human's jaw tightened. Then why is it alone? He asked. No one answered. Because protocol did not include questions like that. The weapons locked on. The pod drifted closer. Its movement slowing as it entered the station's pull. Final confirmation, the system said. Proceed with elimination. The captain nodded. Fire. The command was given, but nothing happened. For a brief second, the system paused, then displayed an error. Manual override engaged. Every head turned at once. The human officer stood still. His hand on the control panel, his decision already made. You just violated direct command, the captain said slowly. The human did not look away from the screen. If we destroy it, he said, we will never know the truth. That is not your concern, the captain replied sharply. It is now, the human answered, without waiting for permission. He activated the docking sequence. The station shifted slightly as mechanical arms extended outward, locking onto the drifting pod before anyone could stop it. Alarms began to echo through the control room. Unauthorized docking procedure. Protocol breach detected. Security override level. Human access. The pod was pulled inside. Sealed behind reinforced doors, the captain stepped forward. His voice cold and controlled. You have just broken Galactic protocol. The human finally looked at him. I know, he said quietly, and I would do it again, minutes later. The containment bay stood ready. Security teams surrounded the pod, weapons raised, systems active. Waiting for the unknown to reveal itself, the human stood closest to the airlock. Closer than anyone else dared to stand. Open it, he said. No, the captain replied immediately. But it was already too late. The seal released with a slow hiss. Cold air escaped into the chamber. The door opened just enough, and inside in the dim light, they saw her, a small alien child. Weak, barely breathing, her body marked with fading light. Her eyes half open but unfocused. She did not move. She did not attack. She only looked toward the human. As if she had been waiting, the room stayed frozen. Weapons ready, fear rising. But the human stepped forward, slowly, carefully. Ignoring every warning around him, he knelt beside the pod. Lowering his hand, for a moment, nothing happened. Then the child moved, just slightly. Her small hand reached out and touched his. Every system in the station reacted at once. Energy readings spiked, alarms screamed, security locked down. But the human did not pull away, because in that moment, he understood something no protocol ever could. Saving her was not just a choice. It was already a crime. The alarms did not stop. They spread through every level of the station, echoing through steel corridors and sealed doors, turning a single decision into a full system crisis. Checkpoint K-17 had never faced a situation like this, because no one had ever broken protocol before. And now someone had done it in front of everyone. The human officer still knelt beside the open pod. His hand remained where the child had touched it. He did not move. Not even when the security teams raised their weapons closer. Not even when the captain stepped into the containment bay with a cold expression. "Step away from the life form," the captain ordered. His voice carried authority, but also something else, uncertainty. The human slowly looked up. "She is dying," he said quietly. As if that was the only thing that mattered. One of the security officers shook his head. "Sir, scans confirm extreme biological instability. Unknown energy patterns detected. This is not safe." The human glanced back at the child. Her breathing was weak, her glow fading in small pulses. Like a light struggling to stay alive. "She is not attacking anyone," he said. "But she will die if we do nothing." The captain stepped closer, stopping just outside the containment line. "And if we do something," he replied, "we might lose the entire station." The silence between them felt heavy, because both of them were right. And that was the problem, behind the glass. The scientists were already running fast scans, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The data came in broken fragments, incomplete, unstable. "Energy core detected," one scientist said quickly. "Structure unknown. Behavior unpredictable," another voice added. "This matches extinction-level classification patterns." The captain turned his head slightly. "That is enough," he said. "Prepare termination protocol." The words hit the room like a final decision. The security teams adjusted their weapons, systems locking onto the small figure inside the pod. The human did not move. He stayed exactly where he was. "Between them and the child, you will have to go through me," he said calmly. The tension snapped instantly. Weapons shifted, now targeting both the human and the alien child. The captain's expression hardened. "You are forcing this situation," he said. The human shook his head slightly. "No," he replied. "I am stopping it." For a moment, no one moved. The station itself seemed to pause. Then something unexpected happened. The child made a sound, not loud, not clear. Just a faint broken whisper. Everyone froze. Because it was the first time she had done anything beyond breathing. The human turned back immediately. "I am here," he said softly. The child's eyes shifted slightly, focusing on him. Her glow flickered once, and suddenly, every screen in the room reacted. Energy readings spiked sharply, alarms intensified. "Core fluctuation detected," the system warned. Energy rising. The security team stepped back slightly. Panic rising in their movements. "She is activating," one of them said. But the human saw something different. "She is afraid," he said. The captain's patience broke. "That does not matter," he snapped. "Fear does not reduce the threat level." The human stood up slowly, still between the weapons and the child. "It should," he replied. The child's glow became unstable again. Faster this time, stronger, not controlled. Not directed, just reacting. The scientist monitoring the feed shouted suddenly. It is responding to emotional stimulus. Her state is linked to environmental stress. The captain frowned. Speak clearly. If we push her, the scientist said quickly, she becomes more unstable. And if we calm her, another added. The energy drops. The room fell silent again, because that changed everything. The human slowly lowered his weapon, placing it on the ground. Then he raised his empty hands, showing no threat. It is not about controlling her, he said quietly. It is about not scaring her. The captain watched him carefully, measuring the risk, calculating outcomes. But for the first time, the situation was no longer clear. Because the unknown was no longer acting like a weapon. It was acting like a child inside the pod. The small figure shifted again. Her hand lifted slightly, weak but reaching. Not toward the weapons, not toward the room, but toward the human, and in that moment, the systems recorded something new. Not a spike, not a surge, but a drop. Energy levels stabilizing slowly, as if the chaos inside her was fading. The captain noticed it immediately. His voice lowered. What did you do? He asked. The human did not look away from the child. I stayed, he answered. Another silence followed, longer this time. Because now the situation had changed again. The threat was still there. The danger was still real, but so was something else. Something no protocol had prepared them for. Because the more they treated her like a weapon, the more unstable she became. And the more one human treated her like a life, the more she calmed. The captain finally spoke again. Containment will continue, he said slowly. But if this goes wrong, he paused, then finished. It will be on you, the human nodded once. He already knew that, because the moment he opened that pod, he had not just broken protocol, he had taken responsibility for something, the fact of. The station did not return to normal, it could not. Because something had changed the moment the pod opened. Not just in the systems, but in the way people looked at the containment bay. Like it was no longer a room, but a question no one could answer. Inside the sealed chamber, the alien child rested on a suspended field. Her breathing was still weak, but steady now. The soft glow around her body no longer flickered wildly. It moved slowly, like a calm pulse in the dark. The human officer remained nearby. Not inside the chamber, but closer than anyone else. Close enough that if she moved, he would see it first. Close enough that if something went wrong, he would be the first to face it, behind reinforced glass. The science team worked without pause, scanning, measuring, comparing. Trying to understand what they were looking at, the results kept changing. Every new scan showed something different. As if the child was not fixed in one form, but constantly adjusting. One of the scientists leaned forward, eyes focused. This is not stable biology, he said quietly. It is adaptive, another shook his head. No, not adaptive, he corrected. Responsive, the difference mattered. Because it meant the child was not changing randomly. She was reacting to something, to them, to the environment, to fear. The analyst who had been silent until now finally spoke. There is a pattern, he said. Everyone turned toward him. He zoomed into the data stream, isolating a repeating signal buried deep in the readings. At first, I thought it was noise, he continued. But it is too consistent. The captain stepped closer. What kind of pattern? He asked. The analyst hesitated, then answered. Not energy output, not biological rhythm. It is closer to encoding. The word changed the room instantly. Because encoding meant intention, and intention meant intelligence. The captain's voice lowered slightly. Are you saying it is communicating? The analyst nodded slowly. Yes, he said. But not in a way we understand, inside the containment chamber. The child shifted slightly. Her eyes opened a little more. Not fully awake, but aware. The human officer noticed immediately. He stepped closer to the glass. "I am here," he said softly. The child's gaze moved toward him, slow, heavy, but focused. For a moment, nothing else mattered. Not the alarms, not the data, not the fear. Just that small connection. Then the systems reacted again. Signal fluctuation detected. The analyst quickly pulled up the data. "It is stronger now," he said. "Whatever this pattern is." "It is increasing," the captain frowned. "Translate it," he ordered. The analyst shook his head. "It is not language," he replied. "It is something else." He paused, searching for the right word. "Memory," he said finally. The room went silent. The scientist next to him leaned closer, confused. "What do you mean, memory?" The analyst pointed at the waveform. "These are not commands," he explained. "They are recorded events, fragments of something that already happened." The meaning settled slowly. Then all at once, the child was not just alive. She was carrying something that did not belong to the present. Inside the containment chamber, the glow around her body shifted again. But this time, it did not spike or collapse. It formed shapes, faint and unclear. Like shadows moving through light, the human officer stared. "What is she doing?" he whispered. The analyst answered quietly. "She is not doing anything. She is showing." The light expanded slightly. And for a brief moment, the chamber was filled with something impossible. Not a full image, not a clear scene, but an impression. A world, bright, alive, filled with movement and presence. Then suddenly, it broke apart, turning into darkness, into silence, into absence. The projection faded instantly. The child's glow dimmed again. The room stayed frozen. No one spoke. Because they had all seen it, not clearly, not completely. But enough to understand one thing. "That was a civilization," one scientist whispered. The analyst nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "And it is gone." The captain looked back at the containment chamber. His expression no longer just cold, but uncertain. Because the situation had changed again. This was no longer just an unknown life form. It was evidence. Proof of something the galaxy might not want to remember. Inside the chamber, the child looked toward the human officer again. Her eyes softer now, less confused, as if she had shared something important, and was waiting to see if it mattered. The human did not move away. He only nodded slightly, as if he understood, even without words, and behind the glass. The analysts realized the truth they had been avoiding. This child was not just surviving. She was carrying the end of something far greater. And for reasons no one yet understood, she had chosen to show it to one human first. The station felt different now, not because the alarms had stopped, but because the silence had changed. It was no longer empty, it was heavy. Like everyone on board knew, they were standing at the edge of something they could not control. Inside the containment chamber, the alien child remained still. Her glow soft, steady, almost peaceful. But the memory she had shown was still alive in every mind that had seen it. A world that existed, a world that ended, and a child who carried that ending inside her. The human officer stood where he always stood, close to the glass, closer than anyone else dared to be. He did not speak this time, because something about the child had changed. She was no longer just reacting. She was aware, behind the observation wall. The command staff gathered again, but this time, their voices were lower, more careful. The captain looked at the data, then at the chamber. "We cannot keep pretending this is just a containment issue," he said. "This is something else," one officer responded quickly. "Sir, with respect. It is still an extinction-level classification. That has not changed." The captain nodded slowly. "No," he said, "but our understanding of it has." The room fell quiet. Because that difference mattered more than protocol. Inside the lab, the analysts continued decoding the memory patterns. Each fragment they uncovered told the same story. A civilization that grew advanced, powerful, connected, then slowly turned against itself, not through war, but through fear. Distrust spreading like a silent infection, systems failing, alliances breaking, decisions made too late, until everything collapsed. The analyst spoke quietly, almost to himself. They knew it was happening, he said. They saw the pattern, but they could not stop it. The words echoed in the room. Because they sounded too familiar, the captain turned away from the data and looked directly at the containment chamber. And now she carries all of it, he said. The human officer finally spoke again. Not just carries it, he said. Feels it. Everyone turned toward him. He stepped slightly closer to the glass. She reacts like it is still happening, he continued. That is why she becomes unstable. Because for her, it never ended. The silence that followed was deeper than before, because now the problem was not power. It was pain. Inside the chamber, the child shifted slightly. Her eyes opened fully for the first time. They were no longer empty. They were aware. She looked at the human, then slowly around the room, taking in everything, trying to understand. Then something unexpected happened. She stood, not floating, not drifting, but standing on the containment field as if gravity finally meant something to her. The system reacted immediately. Movement detected. Energy fluctuation minimal. The captain stepped forward instinctively. Maintain distance, he ordered. But the human did not move back. He stayed exactly where he was. The child took a small step forward, then another, slow, uncertain, like someone learning how to exist in a new world. Her glow remained stable. No spikes, no alarms, only quiet movement. She reached the edge of the field and placed her hand against the barrier again. But this time, it was not fear, it was intention. The human raised his hand to meet hers through the glass. And the moment their hands aligned, the systems registered something new. Not energy, not fluctuation, but synchronization. The analyst's voice shook slightly. She is aligning with him, he said. Not just emotionally, structurally. The captain turned sharply. What does that mean? The analyst struggled to explain. It means her internal system is stabilizing using him as a reference. The room went silent again. Because that was not supposed to be possible. The human did not understand the science. But he understood what he felt. She trusts me, he said simply. The captain watched carefully, measuring risk, weighing outcomes, then something changed again. Inside the chamber, the child's glow shifted. Not unstable, but deeper, stronger. The lights in the room dimmed slightly as her energy expanded. But it did not feel dangerous. It felt controlled, directed. The analyst stared at the data in disbelief. This is not a reaction, he said. This is growth. The captain's voice lowered. Growth into what? He asked. No one answered immediately. Because they were all thinking the same thing. If this child was not a weapon, and not just a memory, then she was something else entirely, something new, inside the chamber. The child looked at the human again. And for the first time, her expression changed. Not confusion, not fear, but something close to understanding. As if she was beginning to decide something on her own. And outside the glass, for the first time since the pod arrived, the humans were no longer deciding what she was. They were waiting to see what she would choose to become. The station did not sleep anymore, even when lights dimmed and shifts changed. The feeling inside checkpoint K-17 stayed awake. Like something unseen was watching from inside its own walls. The alien child had changed everything. Not by force, but by presence, inside the containment chamber. She stood still now, her small form stable. Her glow steady like a quiet star that refused to fade. But stability did not mean peace, because outside the glass, decisions were becoming sharper, more dangerous. The command crew had gathered again, this time not to study, but to decide. The captain stood at the center of the room. The data streams floating in front of him, every report, every scan. Every unknown pattern pointed to the same conclusion: unstable entity, unknown origin. Classified extinction level residue. One officer spoke first. "We cannot ignore protocol," he said. "If this spreads beyond the chamber, we lose the station." Another nodded quickly. "This is not a child," he added. "It is a carrier of planetary collapse data." The word carrier hung in the air, cold and final, inside the observation feed. The human officer heard every word, but he did not move because his eyes were still on her. The child was watching them too, not reacting, not afraid, just watching, as if she was learning something about them. The analyst from the science team stepped forward suddenly, interrupting the tension. "There is something wrong with that interpretation," he said. Everyone turned toward him. He hesitated for a moment, then continued. "She is not transmitting destruction," he said. "She is transmitting memory." The captain narrowed his eyes. "Explain the difference." The analyst took a breath. "Destruction is an event," he said. "Memory is what survives it." Silence followed, because no one liked that answer. Inside the chamber, the child moved slightly closer to the glass again, her hand lifted slowly. Not urgent, not desperate, just intentional. The human officer stepped forward at the same time, mirroring her movement, and once again, their hands aligned through the barrier. The system reacted instantly. But this time, the readings were different. Not spikes, not instability, but structured flow. Like two systems adjusting to each other. The analyst stared at the screen, confused. "She is not resisting anymore," he said. "She is integrating." The captain looked uneasy. Integrating into what? No one answered immediately, because the answer was still forming in real time. Then something unexpected happened. The child closed her eyes, and the chamber filled again. Not with chaos this time, but with clarity. A single memory unfolded, slow and controlled. A world not collapsing, but choosing. Choosing fear over trust, choosing silence over understanding, choosing survival over connection. The image faded quickly, but its meaning remained. The analyst spoke softly. "That is not a warning," he said. "That is a lesson." The captain turned slightly. "A lesson from who?" The analyst looked at the child. "From those who are already gone." Inside the chamber, the child opened her eyes again. And for the first time, she spoke, not in sound, but in a direct thought projection that filled the room. Not words exactly, but meaning. "Do not repeat." The entire station froze. Even the system seemed to hesitate. The human officer closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded slightly. "I hear you," he said quietly. The captain stepped forward, his voice lower now. "This is not communication protocol," he said. "This is uncontrolled influence." But even as he said it, the data contradicted him. Because there was no coercion, only resonance. The child was not forcing thoughts, she was sharing memory. The analyst spoke again, carefully. "She is not controlling us," he said. "She is showing us what happens when no one listens." A long silence followed. Then the captain exhaled slowly. The decision was still his. But it no longer felt simple outside the chamber. The human officer finally spoke directly to the child. Not through systems, not through reports, but simply. "We will not harm you," he said. The child looked at him, and something changed again. Her glow stabilized further, softer now, almost calm. The alarms across the station reduced one by one, as if the station itself was responding to her state. The captain noticed it, and for the first time, he hesitated before speaking, then quietly said, "Containment will remain, but observation only, no weapons. No termination." The order spread through the station. And slowly, the tension began to lower, but the human officer knew something the others did not yet understand. This was not the end of the situation. It was only the moment before it changed again. Because a child who carried the memory of a dead civilization was not finished teaching what it meant to survive. The station was quieter now, but it was not peace. It was something more fragile, like balance held on a thin edge, ready to break if even one wrong decision was made. Checkpoint K-17 continued its orbit, but its purpose had changed without anyone officially admitting it. It was no longer just a military post. It had become a witness chamber inside the containment space. The alien child remained stable. Her glow was soft now, steady like a calm star far away from collapse, but something inside her had shifted. She was no longer just reacting to fear or memory. She was observing, learning, adapting. The human officer stood at the same place as always. He had become the only constant she seemed to trust, and the only one who did not treat her like a threat first, behind the observation glass. The science team continued decoding the deeper layers of the memory core. But what they were finding now was different. It was no longer just fragments of a dead civilization. It was structure, a pattern inside the collapse. The analyst leaned closer to the display, eyes narrowed. "This is not random destruction," he said slowly. "It follows a sequence." The captain turned toward him. "Explain." The analyst hesitated, then continued. "The civilization did not collapse all at once," he said. "It broke in stages. First communication failure, then distrust, then isolation, and finally, internal conflict." The room went silent. Because that sequence was familiar, too familiar. The captain crossed his arms slowly. "And you believe she carries all of this?" he said. The analyst nodded. "Yes," he replied. "But not just as memory, as warning behavior patterns inside the chamber." The child slowly raised her head, as if sensing the discussion happening beyond the glass. Her eyes were calm, but deep, like she was looking through time instead of space. The human officer noticed immediately. He stepped closer to the barrier. "You are hearing them," he said softly. The child tilted her head slightly. Not confirming, not denying, just aware. Then something unexpected happened again. The chamber lights dimmed slightly, and the air inside shifted. Not in pressure, but in perception. The systems did not trigger alarms this time. Because there was no spike, only alignment. The analyst stared at the readings, confused. "She is initiating structured projection," he said. The captain frowned. "Meaning?" The analyst looked unsure. "Meaning she is choosing what we see." Inside the chamber, the space around the child changed. Not physically, but visually, a projection formed slowly. Clearer than before. A city, alive, functioning, connected. But this time, nothing was breaking. Instead, it showed communication. People speaking, systems responding, cooperation holding everything together. Then a small disturbance appeared in the image. A misunderstanding, a delay in response, a message ignored. The system began to show how small gaps grew larger over time. The human officer watched silently. Understanding without words, the analyst spoke softly. "She is showing the starting point," he said. The first failure, the image shifted again. Now showing hesitation between groups, then suspicion, then separation. The captain stepped closer, eyes fixed on the projection. "This is not history," he said slowly. "This is instruction." The analyst nodded. "Yes," he said. "And we are inside it, inside the chamber." The child moved slightly, and the projection shifted again. Now the city was divided. Systems no longer shared information freely. Every group protected its own data, its own safety, its own truth. The human officer spoke quietly. "Fear starts small," he said. The child looked at him, and the projection paused for a moment, as if responding to his words. The analyst looked at the data stream again, shocked. "She's adapting the projection based on dialogue," he said. "It is interactive," the captain exhaled slowly. "This is not a record," he said. "It is a simulation of consequence." The image shifted again, now showing the final stage, systems failing. Communication lost completely, entire regions isolated, then collapse. But no explosion, no violence, just silence spreading across everything. The absence of connection itself becoming the end. The chamber went still, even the hum of the station felt quieter. The child lowered her head slightly. The projection faded. The human officer finally spoke. "So it was not war," he said softly. "It was disconnection." The analyst nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. And no one noticed it in time. The captain looked at the child for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "Why show us this?" The child lifted her head. And for the first time, her response was not just emotion or memory. It was meaning, not in sound, but in understanding shared directly. "Because it begins again." The room went completely silent. The human officer closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "We are still early," he said. The captain did not answer immediately, because now the responsibility had changed shape. It was no longer about containment. It was about prevention. And in that moment, everyone understood the same thing. The child was not just a survivor of a dead star. She was a warning system built from an ending. And she had chosen to show them because she had seen. The station no longer felt like a military checkpoint. It felt like a decision point for something far larger than itself. Every corridor, every console, every silent corridor carried the weight of what had been shown inside the containment chamber. Because once you have seen how a civilization ends slowly, you do not forget it easily inside the chamber. The alien child remained calm, her glow steady, no longer flickering with instability, but now it carried something new. Not fear, not confusion, but awareness. The human officer stood as always near the barrier. He had not been ordered away, and no one tried to move him anymore. Because something unspoken had formed between them and the child. A fragile understanding that could not be written into protocol. Behind the glass, the command crew gathered one final time. Not to decide if she was dangerous, but to decide what she meant. The captain stood at the center, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "We have confirmed everything," he said slowly. "The collapse pattern, the memory structure, the warning simulation." He paused, looking toward the chamber. "And we now understand the truth." The room stayed quiet. The analyst stepped forward slightly. "The child is not a threat system," he said. "She is a preservation system." A few officers exchanged uncertain looks, because that word changed everything. Preservation meant intent, and intent meant purpose. The captain nodded once. "Yes," he said. "And we are inside her warning, inside the chamber." The child turned her head slightly, as if listening to the words being spoken about her. The human officer noticed immediately. "You hear them," he said softly. The child looked at him, and for the first time, there was something almost like understanding in her expression. Not emotional reaction, but recognition. The analyst continued carefully. "She is not just showing us what happened," he said. "She is testing whether we understand it." The captain looked at him. "Testing," he repeated. The analyst nodded. "Yes, if we understand correctly, she stabilizes. If we reject it, she destabilizes." The room grew heavier at those words, because it meant their response was now part of the system. Inside the chamber, the child raised her hand slowly toward the glass. The human officer mirrored her movement again. But this time, something different happened. The systems did not spike. They did not react with alarms or warnings. Instead, they aligned. Every reading across the station began to settle into stability. The analyst stared at the data in disbelief. "She is locking into equilibrium state," he said quietly. The captain turned his gaze back toward the chamber. "And what happens if we remove her?" he asked. No one answered immediately, because they already knew the answer. The analyst finally spoke. The system would lose reference, he said, and return to instability. A silence followed that felt deeper than before. Because now the child was no longer just inside their control. They were inside hers, not as prisoners, but as participants in something larger. Inside the chamber, the child lowered her hand slightly, then looked at the human officer, and for the first time, she spoke again, not in sound, not in projection, but in something clearer than both, a direct thought shared without distortion. Do not repeat. The words were simple, but they carried everything she was, everything she had shown, everything she had survived. The human officer closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. We will not, he said softly. The captain stepped forward slightly, his voice no longer cold, but careful. What do you need? He asked. The question was not protocol, it was human. The child tilted her head slightly, as if considering it. Then the analyst spoke quietly. She is not asking for control, he said. She is asking for continuation. The captain frowned slightly. Continuation of what? The analyst looked at the chamber. Of memory without collapse, inside the chamber. The child turned fully toward the human officer. And slowly, her glow stabilized into a steady light. No longer flickering, no longer shifting, just present. The human officer placed his hand on the glass one final time. And this time, the connection did not trigger alarms. It triggered balance across the entire station. Systems synchronized gently, stabilizing their own readings as if responding to a central truth. The captain watched this carefully, then spoke one final time. We will not destroy her, he said, and we will not use her. She remains under observation, but her presence is now acknowledged as necessary. The word necessary felt strange in the room, but no one corrected it, because no one had a better one. As the command team slowly dispersed, the analyst stayed behind for a moment longer, looking at the data one last time. Then he spoke quietly, almost to himself. It is not just her that changed us, he said. It is what she forced us to see inside the chamber. The child and the human officer remained facing each other, not as subject and observer, not as threat and authority, but as 2 points of understanding across a broken universe. And for the first time since the dead star fell silent, something new began to exist between them. Not protocol, not fear, but choice.